Hey everyone, welcome to a brand new Facebook Live on the Mental Health on the Mighty Facebook page. My name is Rudy Caseres. I'm a mental health advocate, speaker, live streamer. I'm also bipolar, and by no means am I an author. But I have been working with the Mighty for a few years, and I've written some stuff for them. But in comparison to my guest, I'm small time, but I have got quite the lineup for all of you. I'm going to bring on my panelists, each one by one, and they're going to introduce themselves, and then we're going to talk about writing your bipolar memoir. And this, since these guests are so awesome, this advice pretty much can go towards anyone who's considering writing a book of any kind. So just keep that in mind. Feel free to share. Feel free to like. I know that Linea, Melody, and Ellen are sharing with their people as we speak. So, and I'll do the same once they get on screen as well. So if you're watching this live, please let us know that you're here. Let us know that you care by letting us know by commenting. That's the easiest part. And liking, doing the hearts, doing all of the cool stuff, and just saying hi. If you have a question, if you want to know things about bipolar in general, that's cool too. But specifically, if you are someone who is considering writing a memoir about life with bipolar, please, let's hear from you. I see Huda, who is from Karachi, Pakistan. Welcome. I appreciate you. Thank you to Dea Argunos for liking the stream. If you do that, you get to turn my lights on. Isn't that cool? Yeah, it also happens, I believe, when you share it. And that's how I know when you shared, because the lights have to go on. So, when you follow the Mighty, so go follow the Mental Health on the Mighty page. There is Melody. She is awesome. And so is Erin Callie. I appreciate you. Thank you. Without further ado, thank you, whoever that was. Sorry, I missed your name. Without further ado, let's get to our round rectangle high camera of bipolar advocate extraordinaires. Tell the whole world, the whole mental health on the mighty universe, galaxy, solar system. Who is Linea Johnson?
Hi, everybody. I'm Linea Johnson, and I am the co-author of the book Perfect Chaos. It is written with my mom, Cinda Johnson. And so Perfect Chaos, a daughter's journey to survive bipolar, a mother's struggle to save her. And I put it out when I was 22. So I'm happy to talk to you about writing at any age. Happy to be here.
Yeah, and all three of these panelists I've gotten to work with before, including you, Linea. I appreciate you. Like, for a while, I was just admiring you from afar, and then we finally got to work together a couple of years ago. I have your book and all that stuff. So I'm glad that we are reunited again. And part of this little thing, I wanted to embarrass my guests. So I wanted to show pictures from years gone by. You were actually on the AOL website all the way back when. So that is awesome. That is not any small deal. So do you remember that time?
I do, and that is. I remember that I hated that screenshot so much that I got distracted by that more than being excited about the AOL piece.
Yeah, well, I mean, the cool thing is that you seem to have survived AOL, so you've been around longer than AOL, and that is quite the accomplishment. Yeah. So welcome. Without further ado, let's get on to our second panelist. Tell the whole world, the whole mighty solar system, who is Melody Moisey.
Hey, my name is Melody Moisey. I'm an Iranian-American Muslim author, attorney, and activist, and I am currently a professor of creative writing at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, which is here in Wilmington, North Carolina. I have bipolar disorder. My first book was about young Muslim Americans. I wrote while I was in law school, which I no longer practice law, still in good standing. My second book is Held All in Hyacinth, A Bipolar Life. I think that's the one that I'm talking about. But my latest book that came out in March is called The Roomy Prescription: How an Ancient Mystic Poet Changed My Modern Manic Life.
Yeah, and this is the third time actually, that we've gotten to work together. The first time I got to interview you in person, when I drove up to your place, I completely knocked off my mirror on the left side of my car. So that was a fun day. No fault of your own, by the way. I was a complete doofus. But
Thanks.
to show a picture from your days gone by, you were actually on Ricky Lake, and so that's amazing. I mean, the topic you were talking about was very serious, so I don't want to make light of that. But like, this is from like 8, 10, 12 years ago, maybe. My God, how time flies, right?
Yeah. I'm with Linea. You picked a great photo, but it was her new reboot. I actually, she's very sweet. I like her. And she had a new reboot of the talk show for a while, and I was on talking about hymenoplasty as a sort of human rights violation. So fun stuff.
Yeah, but real talk. One of the things I do appreciate about you is that you are really a human rights activist first, and so everything that you do comes from that lens, which I think is very important, and a lot more mental health advocates need to do as well. So I appreciate your work.
Thank you. Likewise.
Awesome. And last, and certainly as most, tell the whole world, the whole mighty planet, galaxy cosmos, who is Ellen Forney?
Okay, wait, can I ask Melody a question first? I know I'm derailing this already. Melody, the beverage that you just held up to your mouth, is that like a gallon?
It's a mason jar. It's a mason jar. I get migraines, and if I don't drink a certain amount per day, I will definitely get a migraine. So that's my self-care. Thank you very much.
Okay, enough.
Okay, back to me.
Enough dilly-daddling. Yeah. No more do.
Right. I'm Ellen Forney. I am a cartoonist, and I'm the author of half my books. The New York Times best-selling graphic memoir, Marbles, Mania, Depression, Michelangelo, and Me. And its companion book that just came out a couple years ago now, Rock Steady, Brilliant Advice from My Bipolar Life. And this one is it's basically a handbook on taking care of your mental health. And it's also in comics, but it's and from a personal point of view. But the first one is more of a memoir with information in it, and this one is information with personal stories in it, really. And I'm now a mental health coach based on the information and in Rocksteady, and based on the information in Rocksteady, I guess. That's me.
Now, can you possibly explain what is going on in this picture?
You skipped the. Okay, so I'm, as a cartoonist, I'm an author and I'm a visual artist. So this is the light rail station entry that's in Capitol Hill in Seattle, and this is 40 feet wide. And what they're doing there is they're installing porcelain enamel on steel tiles for a mural that I designed. So that's the concrete behind my mural. So I guess you'd have to look it up.
Awesome.
It's on my website. It's on my website if you're curious to see this big piece of public art that I'm very proud of.
What would that website be?
ellenforney.com.
Yes, and we will make sure to put all of the links down below in the comments after we're done live. But the great thing about these people is that they're so well known that you can easily just Google their name and come up with a million things anyway. So let's bring us up all on screen now. And before we get into the main event, I just want to show everyone out there is that I am a true fan, and when I say that, I don't. I'm not joking around. So, I have here, I have 2 copies of Perfect Chaos. One of them is signed, the paperback, I believe, which I appreciate, from Linea. So, and what's your mother as well, which we'll talk a little bit as well. I have Marbles and Rocksteady. So there we go. Sadly, not signed, just because I've not gotten a chance to meet Ellen in person yet. Hopefully someday. I actually, the first time I got to work with you, like, we never had really talked at all. So I'm glad that you took a chance on me, Ellen. And here you are again. So also, I have here the Roomy Prescription, which I bought for myself as a Christmas present, and sadly not signed, but I do have 2 copies of Haldol and Hyacinth. One of them signed by Moezzi, of course. And I have her first book, War on Error, so which I got when I got to hang out with Moezzi in person. So I'm not kidding around, okay? I appreciate all of you. I can't even hold these all at the same time. I'm not going to try to. So, hey everyone, welcome. If you're just joining us a little bit late, we're talking about writing your bipolar memoir. My name is Rudy Caseres. I've been hosting these live streams every month, different topics on bipolar with amazing bipolar advocates. And so if you're just joining us right now, just comment, like, share, do the hearts. And so there is quite a few bipolar memoirs at this point. There was a time where it was still a very taboo subject, but because of these lovely people, they've helped reduce that stigma, and people are talking about it. There's all kinds now. Probably the most famous is An Unquiet Mind, which I know you all are pretty familiar with, by Kay Redfield Jamison. Fun person she is. Hyperbole and a Half, which is also a good one, and another a comic one as well. So she just came out with a new book as well. She was Electro Boy by Andy Berman. Okay, interesting fellow he is. Crazy is my soup. I have all the bipolar memoirs too, just so you know, by former wrestler AJ Mendez Brooks, which is a good one as well. Highly recommend that one. And Fast Girl by Susie Favor Hamilton. And there's a million others. Like I feel like people try to send me their bipolar memoir like every other week at this point. But we're here to talk about all of yours. So let's get into the swing of things. Linea, you first. Talk about your backstory and how you got to the point where my life story is worth telling.
Well, my book is actually, it's written with my mom, and my parts are all actually journal entries. So when I started writing the book, technically it was not for a book. It was my private diary as a high school student. And then I wrote because I felt completely alone, because I didn't know of these other incredible books. And then when I was about 19, I had my first hospitalization. I felt, again, super alone. And I actually found Kay Redfield Jamison's An Unquiet Mind. It was, I think, the pivotal book for me. And I think my mom just said, why don't we share our story? Why don't we publish your writing? Because you're always writing. And I think we actually followed through. I don't know. We decided to go for it. And we had some wonderful people help us along the way, and we can get to that later. But yeah, I just decided to publish it because I thought I was all alone, and then I didn't want anyone else to feel that same way.
Now, you're the only one that I know that has written their memoir with their mom, with anyone, I think. So what's, like, I can't do anything with my mom. So hats off to you. Like, what is that process specifically like, working with your mom? Was there points where it's like, Mom, like, what are you talking about? Like, that's not how it happened. Or like, I'm going to do this book by myself now. That's not my impression of you, by the way. I'm just bad at doing voices.
No, it was definitely, well, I've always been, I think my family would think I'm actually overly honest. I was that good kid that, like, if I ever did anything wrong, I could probably keep it a secret for maybe 10 minutes and then I'd have to tell because I'd feel too guilty. But when I got to college and I started self-medicating, I think writing the book, the hardest part was coming clean about my drug use. For some reason, I could talk to my mom about wanting to cut, about wanting to kill myself, but using cocaine was a totally different thing. So I think that was the hardest part of writing it together. My parts are all written in real time. She actually wrote after we decided to do it, looking back. So that's kind of an interesting piece as well.
Now, is there anything looking back that you wish that you had changed or left out completely or added?
You know, I actually haven't been able to read it all the way through since. And
I have a copy if you want.
Thank you. One of the things that that was difficult is I actually also have an eating disorder. And because I had so many different things going on, we decided that actually the publishing house decided that they were going to take a lot of the eating disorder pieces out. So it is kind of feeling like part of my story is missing, but it's an intense story to start with. So I don't know if I wish that was in it or not, or I'll just have to write a second book about that part.
Well, that sounds like another reason to have you on, so please do. So we'll get more into the nitty gritty of like the publishing process a little bit later, but I want to make sure I can get onto Melody now. So talk about, and I'm sure you've probably told it a million times at this point, and you've actually have done Facebook Lives for the Mighty, so you don't have to go into the weeds too much, but just talk about your story and how you ended up with Hell Dolls and Hyacinths, because you have a unique story yourself, because you wrote another book first and then you wrote Hell Dolls and Hyacinths. So walk us through that process.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that I'm a human rights activist, Rudy, so thanks for that. I am, and that is basically what happened as I went to the hospital. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. I realized personally that mental health is a huge human rights issue within the United States, particularly after being held in solitary confinement. And I wanted to write about it from that perspective as an activist, but I also wanted to write from my own perspective as an Iranian American Muslim woman, because when I went looking, and I read all those, a lot of the memoirs as well, and I went looking for a memoir by someone like me, I couldn't find it. So my hope is that I'm filling a gap, and that if people are looking for that, and thus far, you know, I've gotten messages from all over the world, particularly within Muslim majority countries. So that's meant a lot to me, to be able to approach it from that angle and know that now that exists. So no one can say that there is no Muslim mental health memoir out there. It now exists. And hopefully, like, my dream is more and more will come out after this. So I'm all about encouraging more people to do that.
Is there any other Muslim mental health memoirs you can give shout outs to?
Memoirs? No, I actually, it's a growing field, I guess. It hasn't, I don't know of any that I can recommend. So sorry, not yet.
No, that's totally fine. And like you said, there are more Muslims sharing their stories, and it takes people to spark that conversation. So, like I know, like, you don't want to take credit for everything, but like, you are a part of that. So I hope you at least recognize that. That is very huge.
Yeah.
All right, now let's go to Ellen. Walk us through your process and how you got to writing your first book.
Well, it's I would say that that Kay Jamison's An Unquiet Mind was a huge influence on me and my decision to do a memoir, as well as William Styron's Darkness Visible. And I felt like I wanted to not just have my story in the mix for people, but that I would be able to do it as a comic. So I would be able to use this very different medium that incorporates art, and there are things that that you can tell, especially about emotions, about interior life, with art that really doesn't come across in the same way with just words. And also just logistically, words are really tight on a page. And when you're really kind of stimulated, like you might be when you're having an episode or really stressed out, it's just easier. There's just so much more space on the page. I just turned to a couple of really busy pages, but there's just more space on the page than there is on a just text. So I felt like I had something to offer that was different from other memoirs in that way. And also there's a lot of curiosity, I think, about creativity and mental health and mood disorders in particular, and bipolar in particular. And I kind of wanted to offer myself up as something of a case study, as well as reach out to other creatives who were scared and having gotten to the other side to where I really felt much more stable and secure in my stability. I know that I live with a lot of privileges as someone who's white, as someone who found a psychiatrist that I really connected with, that I have the resources of my family to help financially, because good mental health treatment is really expensive, and kind of on from there. And I wanted to be able to share what I could in a format that was readily accessible, a book. So there were lots of reasons that I wanted to do it, and I put a ton of pressure on myself to do it right. And by right, I mean like really get to have it feel like it really reflected my experience. So it's been extremely satisfying to hear from so many different readers and doctors and academicians for whom it really resonated for.
Now, walk me through your writing process, because to say the least, it's probably a little different from Linea's and Melody's, because you have pictures, which I always right. like. I love picture books, but yours are pretty in depth as well, and it's very good. I think I'll put your book away at this point. But how are you so good, and how time consuming is it? Is it as time consuming as I think it will be?
Oh, it's super time consuming. Do you know what I have to say though? One thing that was interesting that you asked Linea about was about writing with her mother. And I think that actually, from what I know of all three of us, that we have really close relationships with our parents that way. I mean, Melody's Roomy Prescription, a lot of that is her relationship with her father. And me, I think that maybe, I don't know anybody who reads the dedications to books anyway, that my mom plays a really big part in my own experience. So I would say kind of one of the things that you just asked about my process is this huge cast of characters in this very sensitive story of mine. I basically interviewed and got the impressions of all of my family members and friends who were in the book. But the book so Marbles took about 4 years. It took me about 2 years for the proposal, just sitting and getting my ideas down. I had a lot of emotions to process. And then, once that was together, and then the first draft was together. So I would say that it was about a year to what most text-based writers would have done. That would be it. That would be the final. That's when actually getting the drawings and getting the composition and doing all of the scanning and tweaking and photographing starts. So it is a long process. We are in my studio. This is
nice.
Where I did most of my work. Those are my brushes.
Yeah, no, I'm envious. And was there ever any doubt that your memoir would be animated?
Animated?
Well, yeah,
Do you mean like in
as a graphic memoir?
Well, no, I mean that's my medium. It's how I think. It's what I do. I mean, I've in some ways I've been a cartoonist ever since I could hold a crayon, because I remember drawing and kind of telling myself stories while I was drawing. And as I got older, I've always done art and told stories, and they come together, and they've kind of come together, sort of woven themselves together, until I decided in my early 20s to be a professional cartoonist. It's how I think. So no, there wasn't ever any question that that's what it was going to be.
Yeah, because there's only I'm sure there's more, but I can only think of a handful of graphic memoirs. I mean, probably the most famous would be, I was going to say American Splendor, but I think that's just a movie, or was that a book too?
It's a book. Wait,
okay.
Are you saying that you don't know of other comics memoirs at all?
Well, I know about marbles, not marble. I know about Hyperbole and a Half. I know there is also the one that came out, Michael Kupperman, that came out a few years ago, who you've worked with as well. So, but I love reading them. It's something that I wish that more artists and authors would experiment with.
Right. There are a lot of graphic memoirs. So there's a whole. I'll give you a list. I think one of the best known ones is called Fun Home by Alison Bechdel. It's her memoir. It's her memoir of basically her relationship with her father, who was a closeted gay man who ended his own life, and her relationship with him as a lesbian, and coming to terms with her own. Anyway, perhaps this is getting off the topic of our bipolar memoirs, but there are a lot of them. Those of you comics fans out there, you can start sending them to Rudy. Well, I'll give you a whole list after.
Yeah, well,
I guess so far as that goes, I'll just really quickly add then that graphic medicine is an established field of comics about health and healthcare, and so and a lot of that is memoir. So a lot of different health conditions, a lot of different memoirs about what it's like to live with any number of different things. So I would recommend, if that sounds interesting to you, graphicmedicine.org is a great place to start. You'll be overwhelmed and excited to find it.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like my reading list is about to be filled up for the year. So thank you, Ellen. I appreciate that. And before we get back into the swing of things, I wanted to make sure to give some shout outs. First off, Samantha says that, hold on, let me just, so I'm not covering. Samantha says that she has 2 copies of Perfect Chaos as well. I lent it to my mom, and both of my grandmas read it. It was truly amazing to share it with them. So you have fans out there, Linea. So you are welcome for that.
Yes, Samantha.
So, and Dea, my mom, says, for all the guests, I'm curious about your feelings, reactions after your book was completed, and we will get there soon enough, so hang tight. And hey, Tessa, how are you? I appreciate you. If you're just joining us right now, anyone out there, hello, my name is Rudy Caseres. We're talking about writing your bipolar memoir, but the advice that we're giving is applicable to just about anyone writing a memoir or any kind of book for that matter. So please, if you have questions about the writing process or even just about being a mental health advocate, sharing your story about living with bipolar, please let us know and share with someone who you think might enjoy this stream or get something meaningful out of it, which I'm sure is many, many, many people. So let's get into a little bit more into the weeds, and let's go to Linea, actually. So talk about what that process is of actually getting your book out there into the world, because I would imagine, especially with a memoir, is that you have to get certain legal things cleared as well. So we're probably not going to get too much into the weeds and insider baseball, but just the short end of the long of it. Walk us through that process.
Before I get to that, I just have to say, Ellen, Fun Home was, I didn't mention it, but I think that was one of the books, along with Kay Jameson's, that really inspired me to write mine. It just like blew my mind. I think that was something like, oh, emotion can be visible. Yeah. So everyone should check that book out for sure. So yeah, getting it out into the world was a big process. I think the thing about memoir that is really interesting is because you're writing about other people, and as I mentioned, there is drug use in mine and things like that. There is this legal thing that they had to go through and make sure that they changed certain parts of people's names, of enough about them so that you can't figure out, who it might be. So even though it's this true story about my life, there is enough things that kind of have to be tweaked it's not really fiction, I would say, but that was an interesting piece for sure, is trying to change people just enough to still make them part of my life.
Was there anyone in your circle who were like, I don't want to be a part of your story?
There is a major character who wanted their name changed. And yeah, that was an interesting piece of it.
And talk to me about like just the process of like working with agents, shopping around. I mean, you also had your mother as well. So what's that process like?
Yeah. And I want to give another shout out to that family piece, because I'm really lucky that I have a strong family, but having that community, it is such a huge, long process. Having a support network through it was hugely helpful. My mom and I started with a woman in Seattle who helped us find an agent in New York. It was, I don't even know how many years, but shopping it, getting that proposal exactly right with our agent took years. I remember the day that we actually got signed was just unbelievable, getting signed with a major publishing house, because it seemed so out, like, just that we could never do it. It was a big process. And when we first talked to our agent, she gave us the best advice. She said, she's really wonderful. She basically, in a much nicer way, said, no one knows who you are. You need to build a platform. So she said, build a platform and check back in like a year. And we did. And we built this platform. I started a blog. We both started blogs, and we came back and she said, I wish that I would have told you to change the world, because you built this huge thing. You started speaking all over the country. So it wasn't just the writing process, but it was also making ourselves marketable. But the best thing she also said was, but do what you want this book to do, whether it comes out or not. So it wasn't just building a platform in the sense of getting our names known. It was, what is the work that I want this book to do? And so we just started doing that from the beginning.
And, something that gets underappreciated in the book publishing process is actually finding people for the advanced praise section of the book. And so you've got some heavy hitters. You've got actress and co-founder of Bring Change to Mind, Glenn Close, right at the top. You have former First Lady Rosalind Carter, You also have Jesse Close, co-founder of Bring Change to Mind, Pete Early, who's a pretty well-known journalist, author of the award-winning Crazy a Father's Search Through America's Mental Health Madness, and Patrick J. Kennedy, which is, he needs no introduction. How the hell do you get this lineup?
Well, that is from those years of doing the work before the book came out. We started volunteering when Glenn and Jesse first made Bring Change to Mind. We were the first volunteer group, and they actually became huge friends and supporters of us. They actually came out with a memoir, speaking of memoirs as well. And through all of that process, we met these unbelievable people. I am just so lucky. There are so many amazing advocates I've had the chance to work with, and just I think that when it comes down to it, we all have the same goal. So I think that it helped that we could connect in such a profoundly vulnerable way, kind of right from the beginning.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why I want to do this topic is because I can't stress enough, and I should be telling myself in the mirror, is that there's something to be said for having a physical object to, as an advocate, as an activist, to be able to promote and talk about and to really be the cornerstone of your advocacy that you're known for. Because when people can actually pick something up to buy it or get it from the library, you can smell it, all that stuff, which sounds silly, but it's true. Like when you have those five senses, that means a lot. That's something that really sticks. So even if that's like the main thing that you're known for, that could be something that can like really, really take you a long way. Obviously, you do a lot of other cool things as well, but this is probably the thing that you're most well known for still. So kudos on this. It's a little dirty. I apologize. Thankfully, I have two. So I want to get to Malady now as well, because we're going to have to start speeding up. But Malady, walk me through the publishing process.
Sort of hell. I don't recommend it. I don't recommend doing any of this unless you're deeply committed to it. It seems nice to have a book as a platform, but quite honestly, I can't tell you how many people are like, I write a column for Bipolar magazine, and I'll go and speak somewhere, and a lot of times like there'll be people who don't even know that I've written a third book, for instance, like they don't. I'm disappointed in terms of how little people read books, and I don't think you should write a book because that you think that's the best way to get a message out, because it's not. Like I think do a documentary, do a YouTube channel. Like there's many other ways to get a message out that are more effective, that I think could be more effective than a book. Whenever I get the most people buying my book, my different books on, like you'll see on Amazon, it always happens after I do television. So it's just like a weird thing that you have to do like you have to go on CNN so that then somebody can have seen you for a minute and 32 seconds and then go buy your book. So I'm not a fan of the publishing world. My last two books are from one of the big five. I guess it's the big four now. They're both imprints of Penguin Random House. And I think there is a huge problem within the publishing world when it comes to authors from minoritized backgrounds. I know white authors who will get 5 sensitivity readers for a book that they've written, and I can't get a copy editor who speaks Farsi. Like it doesn't. They think they're solving the problem, but they're still catering to a certain group of people. And it's very obvious in terms of the books that are published by major publishing houses. My first book was published by an academic press. I went through several agents, to one of whom eventually it had 2 big presses who were interested in it. And I told you it was about young Muslim Americans. 2 of these houses came back and said, "This is great. You've written a dozen profiles of young Muslim Americans. And now, since you have 12 people there, we really think you should interview a terrorist And that should be your 13th chapter and your 13th profile, and come back to us with that 13th chapter as a terrorist. So that's the first taste of big publishing for me. And I went and I ended up publishing that book with the University of Arkansas Press. So those were big, fancy New York publishers that said, go interview a terrorist, whereas the University of Arkansas let me say what I wanted to say. And it wasn't, and exactly to what Linea was saying about building a platform, it wasn't until I published that first book, won an award for it, like done a lot with that first book, that I was able to sell my second book to one of the big 5 publishers. And that's unfortunate, quite honestly.
Yeah, and part of the publishing process is that there's a lot of unpredictability in the process. And so when the Roomy Prescription was being released, it was in the middle of the early days of the pandemic. I was actually supposed to come to a book signing of yours in California, and that was canceled probably just like a couple of weeks beforehand. And so that has to really suck. There's no way around that. So how did you manage that? I mean, probably it's, well, I'll let you explain.
Yeah, well, you know, what I've found in my life and in my career is that I have a certain timeline. I'm very impatient. And what I know is the beloved, other people would call God, or I call also Allah, or, you know, whatever greater power you believe in. The beloved's timeline has been better than mine. And that held true for the publication of this book, because there's an entire chapter on isolation in the book, for instance. Each chapter of the book is separated into a different diagnosis and a different prescription based on Rumi's poetry and how I applied it in my life. So that actually, a lot of people during the pandemic have found comfort in the book, and that meant a lot to me. And I think it did come out at the perfect time. It wasn't the time that I would have chosen, but I do think it came out at the time that it needed to come out, and it's slowly finding the people it needs to find. The paperback is being published in March, so we're hoping that we can do more with it then. But I'm not. Even the events I have in March and April are still online. I'm doing a TEDx talk online, which I'm not sure how that works, but stuff like that. It's ideally you want to do that kind of stuff in person, but I've been doing a lot of virtual events.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to make sure that we can speed things along. So let me go to, thank you, Maldy. Let me go to Ellen, and she can walk us through her publishing journey.
Well, I guess what I would add, just from a comics angle, is that having doing a comic and getting that copy edited and getting feedback from an editor is really quite different. And I worked with an awesome editor at Penguin. It was Gotham, and then it was, you know, things have changed with Penguin Random House. But she had never edited a comic before. So she had a lot of really, really helpful things to help me with around the story structure, around the overall arc. But I also had a couple of cartoonist friends, colleagues of mine, to go through the manuscript, the thumbnail version, and give me very comic specific feedback, like all of these words. You might put them into let me see if it happens to open to this one page. Yes. So there's this one page where I say, let's see if I can get there. I quit.
Yeah.
I don't want to be bipolar anymore. And you can see that it's a storm, and it's a roller coaster, and it's a broken egg, and it's all these different things. And originally I had those in words, and it was my friend, the awesome cartoonist Megan Kelso, who said, I remember this Post-it, do these in pictures? ? And I had to do that. And that's the kind of feedback that is very comics specific. So there are a lot more aspects of things that are the editor and production and I worked with Fantagraphics. So Marbles is Penguin, Gotham, Avery, Penguin, and there's a lot more kind of I don't know, fancies. The second one, Rocksteady, because it was published by a comics publisher, Fantagraphics. A very different sense of the production and things that go into it.
Yeah, definitely. And I love your style, and I hope everyone else. We've actually sold some books during this process, so shout out to Huda, who ordered all of the memoirs and can't wait to read them. So thank you. I feel like that is an accomplishment in of itself. That like we weren't doing this to push units or anything like that. So I appreciate anyone who has purchased the book, and then we'll put some links down afterwards too, just so if anyone wants to and is having trouble finding it. But let's get all four of us on screen. Did you have something to say?
I just add, I did a TED Talk that includes, it's called Finding Balance in Bipolar, and it's about finding balance in bipolar, but there's also a lot about my process of putting together this memoir.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, that it's a good one too. Like, I really appreciate it, and like, you don't think that like I don't have that thing queued up too? Like, like, you kidding me?
I couldn't rein it in.
So obviously we can't show the whole thing, but I just wanted to give a shout out to that. So go check that out. It is on YouTube. What is the name of that again? That TED Talk?
It's Finding Balance in Bipolar.
Awesome. Okay, so we have a couple of questions before we have to wrap things up. This is kind of a long one, so I apologize for it taking up so much space. But actually, let me just read it. Just want to drop my question. Thanks for all who have made this panel possible. I used to write about depression on a regular basis, but after enough discouraging comments and criticism from family, I stopped and haven't spoken out over the last couple of years after being diagnosed as bipolar. What kind of interpersonal obstacles did you face when writing and publishing these really personal stories? And also to Melody, how did you manage the wrath of Persian relatives? So let's just go to Melody with this one. And if anyone else wants to add, please do.
So I have a wonderful Iranian Muslim family, and they are incredibly supportive and have been. There's just like a lot of minoritized communities. There's a lot of reasons people already discriminated against us. So my parents were protective. They didn't want me to add another reason for somebody to discriminate against me. My husband, on the other hand, was from the start really supportive and encouraging in terms of writing the book. My parents, once I let them know that we got a publisher, my agent, and all the bad I was talking about publishing, by the way, my agent is amazing. I have a great agent. Having one good person on her side can make a huge difference. And she also happens to be a woman of color, which I think matters for someone like me in terms of getting the book in front of the people who will take it seriously and who won't consistently say, make your story more relatable, like constantly make your story more relatable. In terms of the wrath of the Persian community, I've found them very welcoming. Like actually they want to talk about this stuff. And we haven't been given that opportunity within our community because we've been fighting so many other challenges. I mean, for years now, I'm terrified daily that the United States will go to war with Iran. I like, this is a big fear to have, and like dealing with racism is not a small thing, and it's related to your mental health. So all of that on top of it, it affects you. It affects the way that you approach any project whatsoever. So the idea that I could feasibly write a book like this and just leave out the Iranian part or leave out the Muslim part, which some publishers early on had suggested, was just not a possibility for me, and I wasn't willing to do it. But in terms of the way the mainstream media works, is they like to simplify stories to an extent that I was absolutely not willing to simplify it that way. And that made my experience in publishing a lot more difficult. I would have had a lot more success if I did go and interview a terrorist, if I did follow the advice of my agent at that time, who I split with very quickly after she actually suggested to me that it could help me in my career if I would just convert to Christianity and then be able to talk about Islam from that perspective. And I was like, well, that's not actually my religion. And yeah, so I split with her very quickly, but like the kinds of things I've been asked to do and the kinds of things I've been asked to compromise have made me somewhat jaded. But at the same time, some of the people who I have come across, including, for instance, my agent, and also so many other writers, including Ellen, including Linea, who have made it worth it. They've made all the bullshit worth it. There's a lot of bullshit you have to go through, and both Ellen and Linea talked a little bit about some of it. And for me, what makes it worth it is meeting people like them and my readers, ultimately.
Well, I'm glad you overcame those obstacles, and I also thank you for being real and honest. And thank you again, Huda, for those questions. Anyone else want to talk about any other interpersonal obstacles? We also have some other questions as well.
I have plenty to say, but let's keep going.
Okay, so Anne says, regarding publishing, let's add that again. How much did your work have to change to fit the publisher's idea of what makes a good book? I believe Melody talked about that in detail, but if anyone else wants to add anything, we also have a couple more questions as well.
I quickly can just speak. I mean, I'm a woman that's white. I have a lot of privilege. And so I feel like I probably could fight for this a little more, but it's hard with a big publishing house because there are things they care more about marketing and selling. And for me, I'm a disability advocate first, and the word save is in our title. And I really hate the word save with regard to anyone living with, well, really any disability. And so that was a negotiation that I wish I would have been stronger on. But because I was so young, I didn't really stand up for it. So there are little pieces around marketing that are tricky.
Even if you stood up for it, you might not have gotten it in the first, you know what I mean? Like that's the other thing is you can also decide, okay, well, publish with this tiny other press, so I don't think you might very possibly you never could have published the book without that save in it. And I know you didn't want that in it. I'm sure
we actually went round and round because originally it was we changed it. It was a journey, a mother's journey to save her, and we changed it to struggle to save her. And so I fought for it even as much as I could. But yeah, it's who knows if they would have kept it if I was like, nope. No, I won't take the word save.
Yeah. Anything, Ellen?
I guess because I'm a cartoonist, and because like for years, really up until sometime in the early 2000s, comics was about artistic expression. It wasn't about a career. It wasn't, their graphic novels weren't out. You were basically, there were underground cartoonists, and that was kind of it, really. And so my own training, years of training, has been about doing what expressing what it is that I want to say and that I want to do. And so I think that I've retained that. I'm not really interested in making it more marketable by doing some, I don't know, like making the title something that I don't think is right, or making it more relatable in some way. Yeah.
No, that's fair enough. And I see your other question, Huda. Unfortunately, we are about out of time, but I appreciate that. And if any of you want to get to address that comment or any other comments that we might have missed later on the day, later on the week, by all means, I am not one to stop you. I appreciate all of you out there in the comment land, especially the people who watch live, but please feel free to keep commenting, keep liking. I like to check the post here and there throughout the week, going into the weekend. So thank you. I know it's been a hard week for everyone, so I'm glad that all of you, including my panelists, were able to join me. Let's quickly get into any final thoughts, anything that you wanted to mention, and please do all of the self-promotion. Let's go to
I just really want to say that
Linea. Jesus Christ. We could start over again if we want.
Thinking of the disability perspective, there's all this thing on person first, identity first language. And I just want to say that this is your story. Tell it the way that you are, the way that you feel most you. And I wish that I had heard that early on. So this is your story. That's all I just say.
Yeah, and you just recently relaunched your blog as well, which I'm also signed up for your newsletter, so I never miss an update. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, I just started up my blog again. I do a lot of freelance writing, but I decided I wanted a place I could just kind of write without having to pitch it and without anyone editing it but me. So sign up for that, and I'll hopefully keep putting those out pretty frequently.
LineaJohnson.com, correct?
Correct.
That is incorrect because it is actually LineaJohnson.com. I was doing so well all the way up until that's how you know we got to end it, because I'm all getting all loopy now. Melody, final thoughts.
Just to piggyback onto what Linea was saying, this is your story. Don't let other people tell you how to tell it, and remember that you're the expert in it. A lot of people will, use different degrees, and and there's plenty. I'm the child of two doctors, two physicians who missed the fact that I had bipolar disorder for a long time. And my father and my mother, both of them being physicians, have told me several times, you know your bipolar disorder better than any doctor ever will. And I think advocating for ourselves, whether it's with respect to healthcare as a human right, or whether it's with respect to publishing, it comes from the same place. It comes from the sense that you're not willing to tolerate injustice. And unfortunately, a lot of us are willing to tolerate it against us, not against somebody else. And even me, I'm better at standing up against injustice for other people sometimes than I am for standing up against injustice for myself. And the easiest thing that I've found to help me along those lines is to say to myself, how would I stand up for somebody else in my position, as opposed to being in my own biased opinion? It's hard to do. You got to step outside of yourself. But it's helped me a lot.
Yes. And how can people stay in touch with you and your comings and goings?
I'm at melodymoezzi.com. I write op-eds, so look out for those. BP, Bipolar Magazine, I write for them as well. And I encourage you, for all of us, if you do read our books, if you have read our books and you enjoyed them, please write a review on Goodreads and Amazon and Library Thing or whatever. You can just paste the same review over and over. That stuff actually matters for folks like us. So I would just recommend that if you've read any of these books and you enjoyed it, go ahead and review them.
Yes, definitely. And mention that you learned about the book on the Mighty as well, just so to know that where you came from. Okay, final thoughts, Ellen?
I would say that it is really powerful to tell your story, and there are all sorts of reasons to tell your story. But I'd like to add that you don't have to. I think there's a lot of pressure to tell our stories, and if you don't want to, or if you don't feel ready, that's totally okay. It's yours, your story. And I also think that there is an aspect to telling those stories about our struggles, and in particular about I don't know, for me, I guess in particular about mental illness, that getting to the part of the story where there's healing and describing the pain and the struggle, and then also part of what I think all of us were talking about sharing is what it was that we came to, how what our journey was like, and then like how we got to some sort of conclusion or stability or some sort of healing or conclusions or lessons. And that's a part of our stories that I think it's really important. It's one of the reasons that I kept going and did Rocksteady, and not just my story and getting to that healing place, but here's what I have to share, and here's I don't know, a bundle of healing for you. So I guess all said, it is your story, and respect it and respect yourself.
And how can people be in touch with you, Ellen? And is there any previews of what to come?
Well, right now I'm working on a book on how to make comics for kids. The Rocksteady has actually been doing pretty well during the pandemic. I think people are really trying to figure out how to keep themselves grounded. It's a lot of coping tools and solutions for insomnia. And my work as a mental health coach has been really, really awesome. It's basically Rocksteady, but one-on-one, problem solving with someone else who has bipolar. It's been really powerful. So
awesome. Thank you, Ellen. Thanks again for hanging out with me. And for these other awesome people, Linea and Maldy, I appreciate all of you. I hope we get to do this again someday. I will be back next month in February for another bipolar advocate round rectangle extravaganza mighty Facebook live streaming vehicle. Go support all of these lovely people. My name, again, is Rudy Caseres. You can also follow me on Facebook, of course. Also at Rudy Caseres, spelled like that, on the Twitter, on the Instagram. You can also go to my website, rudycaseres.com. There's a contact form on there. You can also see all the other past live streams that I've done. If you want to collaborate, please, please, please reach out to me. Don't be shy. I appreciate all of you, all the commenters. Please feel free to keep on commenting. And again, thank you, Linea. Thank you, Maldy. Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, the mighty. Until next month, what should people stay, Linea?
I missed that part.
They should stay mighty, right?
Mighty.
Yes. Goodbye, everyone. Stay mighty.